Hello, I am continuing to read chapter 21 of The Clue in the Crumbling Wall in the Nancy Drew series. The chapter is called or titled News of Florianna. Oh, Dad, where is Emily Foster? Nancy cried, thrilled by the wonderful news. How did you find her? What did she say about Florianna? One question at a time, laughed Mr. Drew. I talked with Miss Foster only by telephone, so I did not get any details. Is she here in River Heights? No, I traced her by contacting various nurses' registries. Miss Foster is working on a case at Hampton. She'll be free tomorrow and has promised to meet us at the hotel there. Then we're both going to Hampton? If you care to go with me, Nancy, I must drive on business anyway. If I care to, Nancy said feelingly. This is the chance of a lifetime. Oh, Dad, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could find Florianna tomorrow? Don't build your hopes too high, the lawyer warned his daughter kindly. Miss Foster may not know what became of the dancer. Even if she is able to provide a clue, the time is very short for you to follow it up. That's the trouble, Nancy agreed, worried. Only a few days are left before Heath Castle will be turned over to the county. Anyway, it seems to me you've built up a case against Hector Keep, and that's something, her father said in praise of her work. Even if Florianna is never found, there's no reason why that unscrupulous lawyer and his henchmen should help themselves to any of the estate. The Drews planned to leave for Hampton that afternoon and spend the night at a hotel in order to be there early in the morning. Knowing she had a dozen things to do before leaving, Nancy fairly flew to the tasks. Her first act was to consult Hannah Gruen about little Joan Fenimore. The housekeeper immediately telephoned her relative, Mrs. Davis, at her farm. The woman said she would be happy indeed to take the child for a visit. Nancy then notified Lieutenant Masters, but the policewoman was so busy, she said it would be impossible for her to see Mrs. Fenimore, that day. As a favor, she asked the girl to go in her stead. All right, I'll be glad to, Nancy said, though she wondered how she would find the time. Mr. Drew, knowing that his daughter had more than enough to do, generously offered to assist. He dropped into the police station and related to the chief what Nancy had seen and heard that day at Heath Castle. He asked that a search be made for the two men, Biggs and Cobb. Okay. That's the page over. We'll pick them up, the officer promised, but without more evidence, we'll not be able to hold them very long. Oh, such typical police behavior. By that time, maybe my daughter or I will have further evidence for you, the lawyer smiled. When Mr. Drew returned home, Nancy was ready to leave. She suggested they stop at the Fenimore cottage to extend the invitation for Joan to visit at the Davis farm. To her surprise, she found, we're going to say, the disabled woman, in very good spirits. I'm editing the Nancy Drew series. Yes, I am. We're not going to use invalid. What a terrible term. What a really, really terrible term. But we'll acknowledge that it's there. The Hooker family has moved away, she disclosed as the cause of her jubilation. Now Joan and Jetty will be separated. It won't be necessary for me to send my little girl away for a visit. Nancy glanced at her father. He shook his head, indicating that it would be wise to forget the arrangement just made with Mrs. Davis. I wonder why your neighbors left so suddenly, Nancy mused. Well, she is a little dancy. It was strange, Mrs. Fenimore replied. Mrs. Hooker never talked about leaving. Around noon today, a truck drove up with Mr. Hooker and another man. They loaded a lot of furniture in it. Then Mrs. Hooker and Jetty left in a taxi with their bags. Mrs. Fenimore went on to say that Jetty had been boasting to Joan lately. He said his father was a smart man, that he knew how to make money without working for it. Oh, the talk frightened me. I've never seen Mr. Hooker, Nancy said, extremely interested in the remark. Can you describe him? Cobb Hooker is a tall man, sullen-faced and unkempt in appearance. Did you say Cobb Hooker? Nancy exclaimed, startled by the name. Yes. Nancy let the matter pass without comment, but asked Mrs. Fenimore if there was anything more she could tell her about Jetty and his family. I never knew when that boy was telling the truth, the disabled woman replied, but he told Joan that he knew there was a hidden treasure. Hidden treasure? Nancy echoed, light dawning upon her. Mrs. Fenimore, did Joan ever talk to the hookers about Florianna and the property she was to inherit? Dear me, yes. The child told everybody about it. The story became almost an obsession with her. And Jetty repeated the tale to his parents, commented Mr. Drew. I don't know, but Jetty told Joan he'd gone to Heath Castle himself. He'd threatened her if she told anyone about it. The Drews made no comment about this. Soon they got up to leave, saying they were on their way to interview a woman who might give them some information about Florianna. Oh, I hope she can, cried the Mrs. Fenimore eagerly. As soon as Nancy and her father left the cottage, the girl told him of her suspicion regarding Cobb Hooker. What a name. Until now, I assumed that Cobb was a last name, she commented. It never occurred to me that Big's companion might be Jetty's father. You're not sure of it now, Nancy. True, but Cobb is not a common name. Shouldn't we talk to the police again? Unwittingly, I've given them the wrong information. Mr. Drew glanced at his watch. Very well, he consented, but we've not much time if we're to get to Hampton tonight. The call at the local police station did not take long and proved to be of great value. Cobb Hooker, the chief, informed the Drews after consulting some records, had a police, Cobb Hooker, the chief, informed the Drews after consulting some records, had a police record. Great. 3 years before, he had served a term on a burglary charge in a distant town. Have you a picture of the man, Mr. Drew asked? The photograph was brought from the files. One glance at it told Nancy that at least she knew the identity of the man who had run into her with his boat. And Cobb Hooker is one of the men who was in Heath Gardens, she revealed. If you make a formal charge against the fellow, we'll try to track him down and arrest him, offered the chief. Mr. Drew did not wish to be too hasty. Couldn't we learn more by having one of your men trail him for a few days? He suggested. The professional stalkers, the original professional stalkers. That's a good idea. I'll put someone on the case right away, Mr. Drew, said the officer, and turned to answer his telephone. 2 hours after Nancy and her father had left town, Bess and George, highly excited, arrived at the Drew house. Upon hearing from Hannah Gruen that their friend had gone away, the girls looked relieved. Is anything the matter? Asked the housekeeper. Plenty. Somebody's going to have Nancy arrested. Who? We don't know. Me Hardy heard about it. It was well that Mrs. Gruen had been warned what to expect, because that very evening a policeman came to the door with a warrant for Nancy's arrest. Or Nancy. Miss Drew isn't here, the housekeeper said, thoroughly enjoying the situation. I don't know when she'll be back either. Perhaps not for some time. An accomplice. Do you have her address? No, I haven't. She and her father went off in a hurry. They didn't leave any address. You're trying to protect the girl, the officer said. Oh, well, it's nothing to me one way or another. I was told to serve this. Oh, this is the officer. Oh, well, it's nothing to me one way or the other. I was told to serve this warrant. If she's not here, I can't do it. Oh, my God. This is really temporarily safe from arrest. Nancy arrived at the Hampton Hotel with her father. The next morning, they waited expectantly for Emily Foster to call. At 10 o'clock, the time set for the appointment, the nurse had not arrived. Both Mr. Drew and his daughter became anxious, lest their trip end in failure. Then 15 minutes later, the woman came hurrying into the lobby. I'm sorry to be late, she apologized breathlessly as Nancy advanced to meet her, but the nurse was to relieve me didn't come on time. Nancy and her father liked Miss Foster at once. She was a woman of early middle age, brisk and efficient, with a friendly smile. Mr. Drew, you said over the phone that you and your daughter wanted to ask me About a former patient of mine, she began at once. I'll be glad to answer any questions I can. As I explained, we're seeking information about a certain Flossie Johnson. The young woman also used the name of Florianna, said the lawyer. I guess there's no patient rights here. There's no right to privacy in this town. I never took care of anyone who called herself by either of those names. The patient you asked me about, a beautiful young woman, injured in an automobile accident about 10 years ago, gave me her name as Miss Flower. Tell us about her, Mr. Drew urged. From the facts we've already gathered, it seems fairly evident that she is the one for whom we're looking. She was a hospital case. Oh, dear God. She was a hospital case assigned to me about 10 years ago, Miss Foster recalled. The girl interested me more than the average patient. She was so beautiful, so unassuming, and yet so distinguished. From the first, I felt that she had not registered under her real name. What made you think so? Mr. Drew inquired. Mostly little remarks she dropped. One peculiar thing was that Miss Flower never had any visitors. No messages came for her. There were no letters. She would allow the authorities to notify no one of the accident. I don't want anyone to know, she would say, not until I'm well. The young woman believed she would recover completely? Nancy asked quickly. Only the first few weeks. Then the doctor told her the truth. That she would be disabled, in Nancy Drew book words, a cripple, but we don't use that, but that she would be disabled for the rest of her life. How did she take it? Mr. Drew questioned. Very hard. She wept for days, saying the strangest things. One remark I recall was, his little Cinderella will never dance for him again. Oh, it was heartbreaking to listen to her. Cinderella. Nancy was so sure now that she was on the right track that her mind leaped from one possibility to another. She nearly missed her father's next question. Where did the girl go after she left the hospital? I never heard, Miss Foster admitted regretfully. From Miss Flower's remarks, I assumed that she intended to retire to some secluded place near Hopewell. Yet it's unlikely the woman had much money with her, Mr. Drew commented. When she was picked up, I understand no purse was found. That's true, said the nurse, but she had some money in her possession. Didn't they call her a doctor before? But she had some money in her possession, though she couldn't have had much left after she paid her hospital bill. No, none of us will. None of us do. All these years, she must have earned a living somehow, commented Nancy. You have no idea how, of course. No, I haven't. That name Flower, Nancy mused. Florianna was deeply interested in gardening, she added, recalling that Mrs. Fenimore had told her about the dancer. And so was Miss Flower. The nurse exclaimed. She was always asking me to buy her garden magazines. Why, the day before her release, I remember she cut an advertisement from the local paper. Yes, Nancy asked eagerly as the nurse hesitated. Probably it has no significance, Miss Foster completed. But the advertisement Miss Flower clipped out offered a small fruit and vegetable farm for sale. A place known as Clover Farm. Where's the farm? Nancy asked, her eyes dancing with hope. It seems to me there's a clover farm at Hilton, about 10 miles from here. I don't know whether it's the same one, though. Nancy turned to her father. Yes, we'll go there today, he said, reading his daughter's thoughts. It may be a vain chase, but something tells me that this time we'll find Florianna. And that's the end of the chapter. Oh, boy.